Shall we get started? So first, thank you very much for joining the panel. And it's a very informal discussion, to be honest. So I will hand over the mic, and if you can introduce yourself and essentially tell us within your organization, what's your user case? How do you use drone, and under what type of authorization? So we'll start with Andrew.
Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm Andrew Richman from the Environment Agency, part of DEFRA. My role is within our operations survey team and the small team that I work in lead on our drone operations across the organisation. We currently operate about 50 drones with about 35 to 40 current operators, and we also use a number of contractors. So I think Tim, from, if he's still here, from RUAS was mentioned about how we use drones, for instance. We operate under a PDRO 1 for our operators. I can come back and tell you more, but maybe I'll go down the line and introduce everyone.
Good afternoon, Adrian Wilkinson from Droneserv, Land and Minerals Consulting Limited. I'm by background actually a geologist, and we got into drones as a safety feature, a bit like the guy that was doing from the climbing point of view. We don't want geologists and surveyors in quarries, which was mainly our background. Been operating since March 2013, so under the old PIFCO and under now OSC. We've got a VLOS 1 kilometre standing operating radius permission and a BVLOS with the new visual observer to 2 kilometres, similar to what Rolly's just done in his sort of a scheme. But we have got visual observers set either side of the takeoff and landing in the middle. And that's with a tilt rotor fixed wing aircraft. It's a very good one, German one, that carries multiple sensors, including time of flight LiDAR, as well as photogrammetry.
Hi, my name's Rebecca Jones, co-founder of a company called Iprosurv. We founded back in 2014, and we provide on-demand drone inspections predominantly to the insurance sector. We operate under the PDRA 01, and we've also got an operating safety case, but I do also sit here today with a hat on as a recognised assessment entity, so we do provide drone operator training.
Thanks, Rebecca. I was actually just wondering whether Rowley had hurt his back working at height and whether anyone had told him about drones. Perhaps you could pass that on to him. So Rupert Dent from Bridgeway Aerial. We have had an approval of various sorts since 2010, and we have an OSC with reduced proximity. And in addition to that, we have some sort of BVLOS with visual mitigation, not some, a BVLOS with visual mitigation approval as well. So we do a lot of linear asset surveys, and that's really where we, for instance, are interested in particular in how we can progress atypical. But data is the name of the game as far as we're concerned. You know, the aircraft is a means to an end, and data processing and enabling people to look at the data is, lots of people to look at the data, is really what it's all about. It is not, in our view, a transport business. So when we start to talk about eVTOL and sort of lots of sort of tunes on drones, you stray into transport, and transport activities are very different. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you all. So I'll start again with you, Andrew. Andrew, Environment Agency, we discussed atypical air environment. We've also seen actually a number of environmentally related, let's put it this way, a user case with the monitoring of flooding. So what's your thoughts on atypical, whether it could change your user cases that you can implement within your organization?
It's actually been really good to see that today. So thanks for the invite for coming along today as well. So it's good to see the industry go in the direction. We've probably got, when we talk about atypical, maybe also kind of also think about BV loss all in the same in the same way. We've probably got a couple of different cases from a BV loss perspective. Is very short range BV loss. So if we're about half our pilots are operating in waste crime teams, if we're in a site where we want to look at stuff, can we fly the drone around the back of a building or structure by losing sight of it, but seeing what's around there? Because maybe you can't get a person around there because of all sorts of difficult things in the way. So that would be great from that perspective. We're really keen about longer distance, so BV loss. So for example, flying a river corridor, or it was great to see the example of coast. So we might be doing tidal window coastal surveys or flying a river corridor during a flood, where we want to be able to fly along that corridor for 20 or 30 miles, looking at what's the situation, getting some situational awareness. We do that now. We live stream from drones in locations, but when maybe we want a larger drone that can fly in that atypical. So there wasn't a lot of discussion today about bigger drones. There were a few pictures. So when we talk about that, the sort of 3-meter wingspan, larger than that, something that can do 20 odd kilometers without having any problems, or even 20, further than that. So that would be good from our perspective. Caveat around that is, if a river corridor becomes an atypical airspace as a corridor, what about all the people who use the river corridor? What do they think about the drones flying by along the corridor in a incident mode? Everyone loves us when it's an incident and we do good stuff. When there's a drone up in the sky and someone thinks at us, the letter ends up on my desk for somebody complaining, and usually it's not even our drone. Actually, it's never been our drone. So, there are pluses and minuses. So, but it's good to see.
So Adrian, you know what the question is going to be. You've got a hybrid eVTOL, and I actually like it very much. It's a quantum systems, so you can fly BV loss. You've had the opportunity to use it here, but also abroad. Can you share a little bit with us the, your experience in terms of flying BV loss operate and authorizations?
Yeah, certainly. We've been lucky enough to have flown just about all around the world, from high latitudes in Greenland to actually similar high latitudes down in the Falkland Islands. Many cases with jurisdictions that just don't care what you do, which is great. So we've actually flown this Trinity drone out to 4 kilometres in the Cape Verde. We were meant to be ringing up every time we took off and landed, and in the end, the Cape Verde authorities just went, "Get on with it, please." We obviously seen it fly BV loss in Germany on the airfield that they do all their test flights on. But the one that we've just secured, and it's literally this week, is to fly completely autonomous, because it's going to be beyond the C2 link. We're taking off from the volcano observatory in Montserrat and flying over Sufa Fields volcano, and that's going to be 10 kilometers out. It's going to do a mission plan flying over the volcano, mapping it and actually taking dust samples of the ash cloud as well, at 4,000 feet above takeoff, and then it's going to come back and hopefully land. Well, it will be. It's beyond. It's going to be beyond the C2 link. So we set the C2 link to an hour. If it doesn't get a signal, it'll carry on doing its mission, and we just basically sit there and wait, and it'll come back. Now, there's a guy in Malaysia who works in a copper mine who's got one of these quantum systems VTOL drones. He goes up every morning and he sets it flying, and he goes down to the canteen, he has breakfast, and he comes back and it's landed waiting for him. So the drone is capable. It's the ground risk and the air risk, and where we're going, there will be no air risk and there'll be no ground risk. So let the drone do what it's capable of.
So we've heard broadly about his journey on OSC, and Rebecca, you've been through the same journey of getting several OSC approvals. Can you share it with us?
Yes, so we obtained our first operating safety case back in 2017. We worked in the insurance sector. We needed to reduce our separational distances, and we also utilise a subcontracted network of drone operators across the UK. So we applied to the CAA for our first operating safety case, so to reduce our takeoff and TOL to 10 metres and in flight to 30 metres. We got that approved, but it was a very lengthy process back in 2017, working with a regulator. Also from the regulator's point of view, for those that was operating in the sector back in the day, it was also about the regulator understanding from a commercial organisation point of view where drones were being used on a day-to-day basis, on what those applications look like. Also fostering in the risk mitigation. A lot of commercial organisations, it's not just about the technical expertise that's applied to the operating safety case. It's also about the company's infrastructure, the internal policies and procedures. We tend to govern ourselves as organisations because we have a brand reputation at the end of the day. We extended that in 2018 to reduce our distances further and incorporate more platforms. Obviously, the redundant platforms also we took out of the operating safety case. We then extended it to EV loss out to 2 kilometres. On the back of the Environment Agency, from a flood footage point of view, we have a lot of demand from a cat response perspective from our insurer clients. There are policyholders that are flooded. We need to capture that data for them. So we transitioned to EV loss. And then just this year, we've transitioned from EV loss to BV loss down to 1 kilometre and also to an increased altitude of 800 feet. So we can capture more data at that aerial perspective.
Data, well, it's perfect because it's
Data. Actually, I wanted to just ask, if I may, Adrian, a question on data you get from your tilt wing. I think you described it. Tilt rotor, sorry. So what is the minimum GSD you can get, and how long can you collect that GSD?
Well, that would depend on the camera and or LiDAR, depending on what we're using.
So camera photogrammetry.
Yeah, but if it would depend on the lens on the camera. Obviously, we can't fly very close to the ground because it's flying at 18 meters per second. So we tend to fly around about the 80 to 100 meters high. But the first camera we got at 100 meters, it was 3.6 centimeters. But the new phase 1 camera, it's down to tiny resolutions, but it's a £30,000 camera.
Yeah, yeah, interesting.
Same goes with the LiDAR. We've got, the point density on the LiDAR is dependent upon the LiDAR unit that you're plugging in, but all the things are plug and play. We just swap one out and put a different one in.
Yeah. So I think to link to Andy's question, from our perspective, one of the things that's a constraining factor at the moment is the quantity of data, particularly if you're using sort of 100 megapixels, or I mean, there are now more cameras, better cameras. But so atypical and BV loss to some extent is restricted by the quantity of data you can collect without stopping. I think is one of the things that we see. Now, I'm talking very much sort of sub 25 kilogram drones, not at all the big kind of military or whatever. And I think in order to advance atypical a bit, one of the things that manufacturers will have to do is develop a greater capacity to absorb terabytes before you have to stop. I mean, at the moment, it's a couple of hundred perhaps of gigabytes, and then you have to stop. And depending on the camera, if you're using 100 megapixels, you can't really fly for any huge sort of space of time before you run into that constraint. So that's just kind of by way of a comment. I think some of the regulatory things that are coming are fantastic, and they're also iterative. And I think the thing that's exciting about atypical is that it's an iterative step, and it's an intermediate step between here and BV loss. And there are tons of things that we can learn from that, which will be useful for BV loss, such as this business of the capacity to absorb data without stopping. So sorry, I don't know whether that really answered the question, but it's just by way of a particular comment.
Final round of questions, if that's all right with you. You're the end user actually among the panel. So as an end user, what do you see as the biggest challenges, or maybe if we look at it more positively, as what are you expecting in terms of the preferred next steps for the industry?
Some of our, I think, looking at today, some of our biggest challenges are actually internally with as a government end user, as our own, not to say bureaucracy, but it's probably our appetite for risk. It's probably down to, wouldn't it be great if we could be a little bit more flexible, be able to take a little bit more risk and explore things a bit quicker from a government perspective. And for industry, for us to be able to accept, yes, industry can do that for us, and we're in a position where we have to influence our senior holders with the budget that actually they want to be able to do that as well. So that's one of our jobs. Hopefully going forward, things like data management is a massive issue for us. Perhaps again we'll look at industry to try and help us solve it in some respects. Or we have to be a bit more clever with what we want as the end product. We might take thousands of photographs, but only one of them's useful or needed. So let's not worry about all the other ones. Let's even accept we're really bad at throwing data away. And maybe we should just, accept that we have to get rid of some of it. What for me positively going forward from what I see today, and from the CA are great, from us as an operator, really good, and I want to be able to, in a couple of years' time or 5 years' time, let a contract for a BVDOS that I get multiple companies coming in and tendering for doing things like river corridor surveys. Wouldn't that be brilliant?
Now, Adrian, it's a different topic. It's not going to be about not the same topic. You mentioned that you started using drones for safety purposes, and you've been quite active actually in terms of best practices, in terms of using drones in the quarrying activity. Can you share that a bit? It's one of the favorite topic of Graham's, education.
Yeah. Back in November 2013, we were given a safety award for reducing the residence time of surveyors within the quarry itself. 100-ton dump trucks carrying 100 tons of aggregate and people walking around. Back then, it was an octocopter that flew for about 10 minutes, and the surveyor would put ground crosses on the ground to survey them in. So all he was doing was getting out of the vehicle, picking the point up, getting the vehicle, and then we'd fly it. So they gave us a safety award for that. We were the first company to bring drones to the quarrying industry. And then when the Trinity came out, it was one of the first drones that was a VTOL drone that also had PPK. So now we don't go in the quarry at all. That's it. We have taken the human risk completely away. We just need the regulator to understand that that's what we've done, and it's safer. In terms of best practice, what we have found there, and it's interesting that somebody put up, I think it was one of the guys from the CA, put up the fact that the number of OSCs has dropped. Well, I know why they've done that, and I'm seeing people that are ditching the OSCs and just using a Mavic 3 Enterprise. It's a fast drone. They're going beyond 500 meters. We know they are. I'm also on the subpanel called Quarries National Joint Advisory Council, which is anybody can join it to offer safety. I normally do it for geology and geotechnics, but I was asked to join one on drones. So in terms of providing advice, because people will claim they don't know the rules, there's still many drones that I see in the quarries that do not have an operator ID on. So we put out a very simple guide that said this is what you have to do. And not only was it to educate the manager and the management as to what they need to do, because they've all got a drone now. There's literally every quarry has got a drone in it, but I'm not sure they're following the rules. So this was a chance to say you must follow the rules. And we also decided to have a little bit of and it's also been mentioned, we've had a lot of quarries where these click for cash auditors have flown over them and then said, I can do this, I can do what I want, it's 250-gram drone, I don't need your permission. And this is getting a real problem because they're doing it to agitate the quarry manager. And they do get agitated. So what we've done is we've looked at a lot of different things, and I've come up with a graphic, which is a no drone graphic. and underneath it, it says, please don't fly your drone at this site. We have danger excavations, danger cold water. We've now got drone operations occur here anytime, any day. Do not put your small drone that we won't see into our airspace because it's contravening Article 240 and 241, where you are unknowingly putting my drone at risk. So we've been trying to put these signs up in the hope that the auditors see the sign and leave us alone, because they don't break signs. They won't go into signs which says don't enter. What they do is they look for where there isn't signage. So we try to put signage up to try and keep these horrible people out of our industrial sites.
And actually, we're going to continue on education because, Rebecca, you mentioned you started an RAE activity.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what came through your mind?
So, being an on-demand operator going into operating safety cases, for a recognised assessment entity for Iprosurv was a kind of a natural business progression, also a strategic decision in terms of obtaining Adrian assessment entity status. Iprosurv, we've communicated, dealt with operators for 10 years. And we have seen a large disparity around operator training, and Adrian, you have just absolutely nailed it on the head. In terms of the conversations that we're having with organisations, we're going in as an organisation talking about drone capability, what the rules and legislation are, the platform capability. We know that the platforms are way more capable than what the regulator allows us to do. So one of fundamentally draw a circle around that is, one, we did it for organisation credibility. We also did it to do CPD modules with our operator platform. It was a challenge, me having to educate operators that are wanting to join the platform on a day-to-day basis around their airspace, what type of airspace they were flying with, and revisit the rules and legislation that they should be adhering to. And moving into 2024, how are we using that RE recognised assessment entity? We read the Skies Without Limits report 2022. 650,000 jobs are going to be created by drones by 2030. There's massive return of investment from an organisation's point of view. But if we actually look at the demographics of a drone operator at the moment, that demographic typically sits between a 45 to 55-year-old male. There's not a lot of women in that sector. So we have chosen to take our training status into STEM education, look at changing that demographic of the future, encourage more females into the sector, but equally get those an age where we can start to really influence in terms of what their career looks like, what their job skill set looks like, enhance their green skill capability for organisations ultimately to receive all that return of investment of invested into a drone unit or drone technology within their organisation. So if we can get the employed students of today will be the employed of tomorrow. If we can get them to engage in that capability and that skill set, we can see that the drone industry is going to flourish.
Great. Rupert, can you have a final word, not education and not atypical?
Okay, I'll try. Well, you left out one thing, which was oversight, which I think both Rebecca and Adrian mentioned, i.e. auditing, if you like, or policing. And sadly, I don't think Kevin and Callum are still here. But one of the things that when they showed the slide of the number of operators, the number of flyer IDs and so on, I actually, when you look at those statistics, I actually think they're telling you something very slightly different, which is there is a risk that a large chunk of the community at large, the drone community at large, so both professional and leisure and so on, but more particularly professional, are actually slipping out of the category of they are having some form of oversight on them, whether it's an annual audit or whether it's some form of renewal process they have to go through. You know, what it's showing you is that people are dropping off. They're forgetting their PDRA 01s, they're not renewing, and they're just carrying on with very simple kit in the open category. And these are the guys, and it sounds like, you know, in terms of the kit, what Adrian was saying, it sort of corresponds. You know, it's a really small 250 gram kind of open category. These are the guys who are out there that are not really so interested in the rules. And I think, you know, some form of additional oversight needs to be thought about and planned. Interestingly, exactly that happened about 25 years ago in crewed aviation, to do with Part M and having AOCs and so on. And exactly, it's a complete repetition of that process. And it happened 25 years ago, 2025, in crewed aviation. So that was just one thing. And then if you allow me one quick other thing, which is, you know, I've talked about where the activity sits today. So if you look at what the business of drones is all about, it's data collection, and that is becoming sustainable. If you look around at companies are actually starting to make, you know, some money, and that's great news. The transport component, which is medical deliveries and all this sort of thing, fantastic stuff, but it's still very much in a trial phase. And I think we just need to sort of recognize that in terms of future flight, investments in the future and all the rest of it. You know, the business case for transport is a difficult one. Ask any airline. And, you know, using drones for transport is going to have to stack up financially to make it work. And the more friction there is from either a regulatory or a planning and do this, do that, sort of before you do something else, world, you know, that's not yet proven, and there's quite a long way to go. But it will come. It may not be quite as soon as some of the timetables and things that are being shown, in my opinion. But that's all I wanted to say.
Good. Thank you very much to the four of you. Thank you so much for sharing your insight. If we can first applaud our speakers.